With Black Friday in the rearview mirror, it's time to turn our attention to the holidays. Now, the winter holidays are a unique time for a lot of different folks and for a lot of different faiths. It's the time of year where Christians in particular celebrate the birth of Jesus. But to be honest with you, Christmas doesn't really carry the same spiritual significance that it used to for a lot of folks, does it? If that's true for you, believe me, I absolutely understand. I mean, between all of the shopping and the holiday parties and the family get-togethers and the meals to make and the places to go, I mean, it can be an insanely busy time of year. Your mind can wander and get lost. But more than the problem of general busyness, I think one of the reasons that Christmas has lost its spiritual significance is, well, we just aren't sure we believe in it anymore, right? I mean, for some of us, the version of Christmas that we grew up with, and by extension, the version of God that we learned about as a child, it just didn't really hold up in adult life, right? Maybe the God you thought you knew didn't ever come through for you, or maybe the version of God that you were sold never really lived up to what you were told. Now, if that's you or if that's someone you know, then this video is for you. Because we're going to explore whether or not Christmas still matters. Spoiler, I think it does. And we're going to explore what its true meaning might be. Teaser, it might be a surprise for you. Those of you who have cooked large dinners before, you know this really well. You need to have a plan, right? I mean, the first time that I ever hosted a holiday meal on my own was a bit of an ordeal. I figured I would make the main course, a steak recipe that I was trying out for the first time. And then I would do up the potatoes and the vegetables and all the sides and the dessert and the rest. But truth be told, prepping a big meal was a little bit like stumbling around in the dark for me. I remember Alana coming home and finding me more than a little stressed, with dishes stacked up everywhere and more than I could handle on the stovetop and sweat slowly beating down my forehead, unwilling to admit defeat. And then she asked me quite politely, what was your plan? As in, did you make a plan for what you would prepare, how and when and in what order? What was your plan? Which is actually a question that she asks me a lot. And typically it's in moments where I've gotten myself into some kind of mess due to the fact that I hadn't really made a good plan. Like the time I started ripping up the carpet in our basement bathroom, or the time I got stuck in the stairwell trying to move a headboard, or the time that I was on a ladder with the reciprocating saw trying to reach for branches that were just out of reach. You know, it's important to have a plan. If you don't make a plan, it can be a little bit like wandering around in the dark. You can stumble, especially if you're new at something. Now, since then, I've learned to make a cooking plan, to schedule when you're going to prepare what and what's going to go in the oven and for how long, and how to stagger stuff so that you don't get overwhelmed and so that the food doesn't get cold when it's all supposed to come out at the same time. She showed me how to plan the work and then work the plan, which is something that I think we all need in life, right? Not just when it comes to cooking or cutting down tree branches, but there are a lot of things that, if we're honest, we're kind of stumbling around in the dark on. And it would be really nice if someone could turn on the lights and show us how to work a plan. Maybe you need somebody to show you how to handle money well because nobody ever did. Or maybe you need somebody to show you how to parent well because, as it turns out, having a parent doesn't equal being a good parent. Or maybe you'd like someone to show you how to walk with your teenager and learn to live with their technology. Or maybe you need somebody to show you how to reconcile that relationship because you don't even know where to begin, and an apology just doesn't really seem like it's going to do it. I mean, sometimes life can kind of feel like we're wandering around in the dark, right? Now, this isn't really a new problem for humanity. We've been at this for a while. And this is actually exactly what life felt like during the reign of King Ahaz. Oh, hold on. What does any of this have to do with Christmas? Well, stay with me. I promise it's coming. We're getting there. If you don't know him, King Ahaz was the ruler of the Jewish nation of Judah in the mid-700s BCE. Now, a little historical context for Ahaz's world. There was a bit of a Game of Thrones going on between the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah that he ruled. And there was also some conflict with some of the other neighboring nations as well. Now, while all these small nations and tribes were doing battle with each other over land and resources, way off in the east, Assyria was slowly slowly advancing in their world-dominating campaign, becoming this global superpower. And so Ahaz, king of that southern kingdom, Judah, finds out that Israel and one of the neighboring nations, Damascus, he finds out that Israel and Damascus are planning to team up to take him down. They're going to form an alliance and forge an attack. And so in order to protect his own kingdom, Ahaz reaches out to that global superpower Assyria and asks them for help, and they obliged. But in payment for protection, Ahaz and all of Judah become subservient to the Assyrian Empire, which means they also had to pay a bunch of tribute to them. And during that time in that relationship, Ahaz kind of became enamored with their new empire. He loved Assyria's way of life. He started worshiping their gods, started trying to rule Judah the way that Assyria ruled most of the known world, and it didn't work. In fact, it plunged his own kingdom, Judah, into ruin. He completely ignored all of God's laws for how to operate as human beings and rule, and instead imitated the Assyrians, and that destroyed him. His land ended up getting ruined. The poor, the widow, and the orphans ended up suffering. His society just crumbled and fell apart. Enter the prophet Isaiah onto the scene. Isaiah's job was to speak the truth to Ahaz. What does this have to do with Christmas? I swear we're getting to it, I promise. Now, if you read the book of Isaiah, you'll find him spending the first 8 chapters describing what's been happening to the kingdom of Judah, all because of King Ahaz. At one point, he describes it like a once beautiful woman who is wealthy that started to slowly go bald and lose all of her clothing, and she gets shredded and ruined and just beaten to a pulp. And then he describes it as a vineyard that never really produced fruit, and so eventually it was trampled by surrounding hordes of livestock. The message that Isaiah was trying to give Ahaz was, look, you're losing everything. Your people are getting ruined. You've led us all astray. It's like someone has turned out the lights on your whole kingdom because you've stopped following God. You've got no idea which way is up anymore. You've lost all direction, and the devastation around you is the proof. That's the first 8 chapters. Last time, stick with it, please. I promise we're going to get there. In chapter 9, though, Isaiah offers this turn, a word of hope. He says that God's going to reseed this land, that someday a king is going to come who will change everything. And then Isaiah delivers this prophecy. Now, the grammar of the prophecy sounds funny because he starts talking in the present and then flips to the future and then talks about the future as though it's happening in the present. Here's what I mean. Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, he'll honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressors. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning. There will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing it and upholding it with righteousness and justice from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. This is what the future king will be like, says Isaiah. He'll be a wonderful counselor, an almighty God, an everlasting Father, and a Prince of Peace. That's a pretty common verse to see on a Christmas card. I mean, Christians love that bit around this time of year. For unto us a child is born. And the reason we quote these words from Isaiah at Christmas is because Christians believe that the future king he was talking about, that child to be born, was Jesus. And the reason that Christians believe these words are about Jesus is because Jesus claimed that they were written about Jesus. In fact, he claimed that all of the law and the prophets, basically the entire Old Testament, were pointing to his coming. Now, that's a pretty lofty claim to make about yourself, one that anyone would be tempted to doubt. I mean, the first disciples even doubted it. They walked and talked with Jesus for 3 years. They heard what he said. They saw what he did. And then when they saw him die, they assumed that, well, he must have been wrong. I mean, that predicted king was supposed to reign forever. Dead people don't reign forever. So what changed? Well, they saw Jesus risen from the dead. And for the disciples, that proved to them that Jesus was who he said he was. And it started to shift how they saw that prophecy from Isaiah those hundreds of years before. I mean, Isaiah predicted that the future king would be a wonderful counselor. They saw that in Jesus. Now, when Isaiah says wonderful counselor, he means something different than what might pump into our minds. We might think, oh, a counselor is someone who listens to you to help you sort out your problems, and a wonderful one, well, that must be a really, really good counselor. I guess that means that Jesus is going to be a really good counselor who will listen to you and help you sort out your problems? Not quite. The word for wonder here is the word pele, and it means beyond understanding. And the word for counselor is the word yoetz, and it means to be a strategist, to offer wise and valuable insight, to have a plan. In other words, a pele yoetz is the one who has a strategy that can be beyond understanding, the one who knows the plan, the one who can best show you how to operate this thing called life, even though at times it might seem beyond understanding. The disciples, they saw Jesus as that wonderful counselor, but often his strategy for life seemed counterintuitive. He said that the poor would be blessed, that those who mourn are blessed, that those who are meek are blessed, that the merciful, the pure in heart, that they're the ones who would be blessed. But in their world, that's just not how it worked. Jesus said that the last would be first and that the first would be last. He said that if you want to be great, you need to become the least of these. The way to lead is to get on your hands and knees to serve. Jesus said to forgive not just 7 times, but 70 times 7, which, quick math, is 490 times. Jesus said that the best way to live your life, your financial life, is to organize it around giving and not getting. I mean, in a world where everyone thought that God was a lot like the government, always listening, always watching, always waiting to punish you when you step out of line, Jesus said that God was more like a father who was standing on his front porch, always waiting, always watching, scanning the horizon, hoping for his lost children to come home. And when it came time for Jesus to depart and return to heaven, he gave his disciples one final command, one final rubric for building your plan for life, to strategize how to make your way in the world. And one command, not 10 commandments, not a book filled with rules, just one. It was to love one another the way that I had loved you. He didn't leave them to figure out what it means to love others. He gave them a clear direction, a pathway, turn on the lights, the way that I have loved you. Do you remember the way I loved you? Peter, James, John, Corey, Lydia, Angela, Zach, Brandon. Do you remember how I loved you? Look, we've all been wandering around in the dark in different ways. Every single one of us at some point has also got to recognize, like Ahaz, that the wreckage around us isn't always someone else's fault, but that we contribute to it. In fact, I have this natural tendency to turn inward on myself, so focus solely on myself. And that's what we call sin. It's what Ahaz did. It's what Peter, James, and John did. It's what I do. And the result of that sin is death. And it doesn't really take much for us to look around and see the death-like wreckage that my selfishness can cause. For Ahaz, like the rest of us, it caused him trouble in his relationship with others and the dirt that he lived on and the way he saw himself. I mean, Isaiah spends a lot of time pointing out how Ahaz's behavior affected the people in the land that he was supposed to be caring for, which ultimately separated him from God. And there's nothing that he could or really that any of us can do to fix that. But herein lies the point of Christmas. Christmas was God's mission to show the world what he was really like. It's about a God who is loving and merciful, so much so that he sent his son Jesus to set things right. But not just to die for our sins, but but to give his very life as a light in a dark place, to show us how to operate this thing called life, to be that wonderful counselor, that Pele Yoetz, the man with the life plan that at times can be beyond understanding. I mean, Jesus said it himself. He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not stumble around in darkness. I've got the plan, says Jesus. I've got the strategy. Follow me, and I will show you what life can truly be like. You see, part of the spiritual point of Christmas is to ask yourself, are you tired of wandering around in the dark, trying to sort this life out on your own? What's your plan? Okay, Corey, I got it. Christmas is about seeing the wonderful counselor aspect of God enter the world through Jesus. But what about the Almighty God part, and the Everlasting Father part, and the Prince of Peace and all that part? Well, that's a great question. That's exactly where we'll go next.